Welcome back to the Black Letter Podcast. We set out to create an entertaining and exciting podcast about law and business. Black Letter, the name, comes from the Gothic typeset. Over time, Black Letter became the only font that English law books were printed in. It made it harder for kind of the common person to understand what the English law books said. Black Letter came to represent something that was law, that was set in stone, that was sort of old and a well-settled fundamental principle of law. We're here to demystify black letter law. We're here to demystify things that happen in business and law and where those two meet. And I hope you have fun listening. Hey, listeners, welcome again to another episode of the Black Letter Podcast. Today with me, I have Steve Fretzin from Be That Lawyer, the man with the plan. He has his own podcast and life-changing strategies. So we're going to hear from Steve today about first how he got where he is with his famous and well-known podcast and his Seinfeld list of quotes on his back wall. So Steve, welcome to the show. Thanks for joining us. And why don't you tell us a little bit about Steve Fretzin and Be the Lawyer? Be That Lawyer.
Sure. Yeah, Be That Lawyer. Thanks, Tom. I was born in a small village in, no, I don't know where you want me to start. But I guess the easiest way to go is just to say that from a very young age, I had a lawyer father. I had to think fast on my feet. He was always grilling me with questions, and I ended up having sort of the gift of gab. And when I was 16 years old, I ended up selling shoes at the local mall. And I realized you can make commissions if you sell more than someone else, or if you just sell more than whatever. So I was making $3.35 an hour, if you can believe that. And plus commissions, 1% on shoes and 5% on accessories, purses, socks, all that kind of stuff. Yeah. And I got super hyper competitive with the other part-time salesmen at other stores. And my manager got me all revved up about it because he knew I'd be selling more. And I just sort of fell in love with the whole, how do we take care of customers? How do we stay competitive? How do we make sure people walk away with not only what they wanted, but maybe what they didn't realize or know that they wanted, but that they needed anyway. So they'd walk away with 3 pairs of shoes instead of 1 because, you got to have this color if you got to have that color and, the whole spiel. And so I kind of got through college for no other reason than to go back into sales and start working my way up the food chain of sales jobs. I ended up in franchising. And what was unique about franchising was I wasn't just selling franchises or businesses. I was overseeing all these businesses in the Midwest, helping them with sales, helping them with marketing, hiring, firing, you name it. And I became more of like a business coach, a business advisor. And my favorite part of the whole thing was helping them sell. Most of them didn't have a sales background, so helping them sell. So I kind of did that. I worked with a coach myself, and I ended up coming up with this great philosophy of sales called sales-free selling, where it's like, You hate being sold to, I hate being sold to, we hate salespeople. So we need to come up with like a different way of running meetings where everybody sort of wins. And I came up with this philosophy, tested it out, it worked great. And I started my own business in 2004, really working with entrepreneurs, the local website person, the local financial guy, this company, that company. I never thought for a minute I'd work with lawyers until the recession at 2008-9. Then it absolutely took over. I started working with attorneys and law firms. Within about a year and a half, it became essentially 85% of my business. And what connected was not my lawyer father, although you think that might have been a thing. It was really the fact that I was very good at the soft sale, the sales-free selling, helping people do something that they didn't want to do because it was sales and salesy and uncomfortable. And I don't know if you know this, you're the only guy I know that probably went the other way, but how many lawyers go into law so that they can sell legal services?
Right. Zero, like very
0.0.
Less than like a few in my entire firm of like 80 lawyers. So
yeah,
totally. Yeah. It's one of the biggest problems on earth for lawyers is they don't want to ask for money because they're experts in a technical field of law. I mean, it's just it is a very rare and hard thing for lawyers to do.
And it wasn't the bill of goods they were sold, right? It was, hey, become a great lawyer, practice the law, do something noble, build a law practice with your own clients. Okay. But how do you get your own clients? That's not talked about or discussed much. So I decided to just change my business from the company Sales Results Inc. into Fretzin Inc. and essentially teach sales-free selling. And that's what I've been doing for the last 16 years.
Gotcha. Sales free sellings. I love that. So how did you get to Be That Lawyer podcast? What was the genesis of the podcast?
I was talking to this very high-end attorney at formerly at DLA and now with McDermott Emery, and she had her own podcast, and she had me on as a guest to talk about business development for lawyers. And at the end of the podcast, I asked her, I go, you must spend a lot of time on this podcast. She goes, I don't spend any time on this podcast. I just meet with you, talk with you, and then I'm done. I go, I want that. Yes, please. And so she introduced me to a production company out of LA. And 4 years ago, I started the Be That Lawyer podcast, and I've done
Yeah.
almost 400 episodes, doing 2 a week. And it's been amazing. It's been like I've done video, I've written 4 books, I've done all this stuff. Nothing has compared to the podcast as it relates to branding, being able to meet amazing people like you, Tom, and others everything had blown up, kind of blew up from the podcast.
Fantastic. So do you think now, to kind of close out this segment, are you where you thought you would be when you first got out of college or when you were selling shit? Did this ever, was this part of your dream or did you just kind of stumble into it?
I mean, I think part of what my father's advice to me was, because he was a solo and an entrepreneur, and his idea was, if you could ever work for yourself where you run the show, do it. Like, always take that opportunity if it's a good one. So when I knew at some point I was going to start my own gig, I just didn't know what. Was I going to open a Dairy Queen? Was I going to, sell, marketing? What was I going to do? And I just fell in love with coaching people and helping other people to be successful, and got into it. And so that was like, just a huge shift for me. Just deciding to run my own show this way.
Gotcha. Well, congratulations on that. So, Steve, when we come back, I'd like to ask you about some significant challenges that you faced either in coaching or with your business itself or with the podcast, any of those things, and the advice you might have as a result of that in the last segment. So, yeah. So thank you guys for joining us for this initial segment and meeting Steve Fretzin from Be That Lawyer podcast. Check it out, especially if you're a lawyer, and no soup for you if you don't. Steve, we'll see you back here on the next episode, which for you and I will be in about 30 seconds, and everyone else will probably be in a couple days. That's all for today's episode of Black Letter. Thanks again for listening. Join us next time when we talk about more Black Letter issues in creative ways. Make sure you subscribe to the podcast so you never miss an episode, and check out our website at blackletterstudios.com.